Someone searched the internet for 6 months in search for medical records by just exploiting one protocol that's out there, rightly connected to the internet. This person found 43 million medical records. And this person is here today, so it's going to be an interesting talk. Thank you for joining. My name is Lieuwe Jan Koning, and from the Security Operations Center floor here at ON2IT, I welcome you to Threat Talks. And today's subject is healthcare. Let's get on to it.
Welcome to Threat Talks. Let's delve deep into the dynamic world of cybersecurity.
Let me welcome my guests. First of all, Sina Yazdanmehr. He is the CEO of Aplite, and Aplite specializes in cybersecurity for healthcare. And Sina you are, if I may say so, a nerd. Hey, you're very good at your technical job as well. I mean, he's an ethical hacker. He found all those records, and he made a talk about this at Black Hat. And he's here to talk to us about that today. If there was one single piece of information that hospitals hold that leaks, what would be, in your opinion, the worst piece of data that could leak?
Well, hey, thanks for having me today here. I would say it's patient data, because in hospitals or in general in healthcare system, you have a lot of sensitive information about your patient, which is including the personal information, name, address, gender, a lot of PII. And also what is very unique in healthcare that you can also find PHI, protected health information, that there are medical records, the result of diagnosis, examination and stuff that you can find PII in other industries like in finance or others, but the health information, which is also very sensitive, is only in the healthcare industry, and you can find it there, which could be actually a life-lasting piece of data. For example, some people who have very long-lasting disease that stays with them the whole life, or some more personal information, are only available in healthcare industry, and if it's leaked, it could cause very bad consequences, I would say.
The stakes are high then.
Definitely.
Yeah. My other guest, Rob Maas, he's the field CTO of ON2IT. Rob, welcome. If we were to rush you to the hospital today and you had the choice, would you rather go to a hospital with the best doctor or with the best CISO?
I think I'm disappointing you, but I would go for the best doctor.
Well, I can't blame you. Probably most people would, but let's see. Maybe this is part of a challenge for healthcare.
Definitely.
We'll get into that in a bit. So what can you expect today in today's Threat Talk? We are going to talk about the DICOM protocol. It's a very widely used protocol within the healthcare industry. Sina has done a lot of research on that, so he can tell us a lot about that and all the vulnerabilities that are attached to that. That's one threat that we are going to talk about. We're also going to talk about a Screen Connect threat at TDS pharmacies. There was a big one. And a ransomware attack at HSE hospitals in Ireland that caused a lot of trouble as well. And of course, as you're used to by now, we're going to have a threat hunt. So if you see a code somewhere, I'll also mention it, then make sure you take note of it and send us an email, because you can win a t-shirt. Sina, can you explain a little bit about this DICOM protocol? We mentioned it a couple of times already. What happens there? What is it, and what's the problem?
So DICOM is the main protocol that is used in medical imaging system, and medical imaging system is like, for example, MRI, CT scan, ultrasound scanning. I guess we all have seen a result. It's a big black and white picture that shows inside of your body. That's DICOM. And it has been around for 35 years now, I guess. But it's been a couple of years that we use it on the internet more often.
35 years? So the protocol existed that was before internet?
More or less, I would say yes, because they needed to transmit. First, DICOM has two parts. One is the object structure, that it says, okay, how this file should be stored on a system, different fields about the patient, about the examination and everything. And also it has a network protocol that is, okay, if you want to transmit this file from a medical device to a system or between two systems, how you can do it. The protocol is used for structuring the data, and it has both personal information. If you open one of them, it's name, address, gender, a lot of personal information, and also result of the examination, plus some meta information about which doctor prescribed you this, which doctor performed the examination. So one single file has a lot of information.
So when we rush Rob to the hospital later today,
Yeah.
and he doesn't care about the CISO in this hospital, and maybe, as you have proven,
It could be, actually, yes. That's sadly true. That his
So
information.
You can watch my broken leg, at least the images of it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, it was a broken hand in my presentation in Black Hat, if you saw it. But yeah, that's the reality that could happen. And recently, it's been a couple of years that we use this protocol more and more on the internet because of course, digitalization in healthcare. That now we don't print those pictures anymore. We just digitally transfer them because of the demand, because of new solution softwares that came out. So it's more on the internet, and we share it digitally instead of printing it. Some hospitals, some clinic move to the cloud because it's very good, convenience, cheaper. And they forget about the security. So the DICOM server, which is called usually PACS, where you store and organize all the pictures on the cloud. Now your doctors, your medical staff need to have access to that from your hospital or somewhere else. It's hard to maintain the access and control. So many hospitals or clinics, they just open it to the internet because it's easy.
But also, if the protocol is already 35 years old, I guess there's no security embedded in the protocol for sending the file security over the internet.
That's another challenge. There are some extensions to the protocol. When you read the specification, there is, for example, one for TLS, one for encryption, one for access control that even it supports, for example, JWT for authentication. You can integrate it with your SSO, a lot of things. The challenge is that many devices have been around for years. They are very old. You cannot easily upgrade them. You cannot, maybe some of them, even the hardware is not capable of supporting these new technologies. So devices are expensive. They are big. Logistically, you cannot just say, okay, this device now supports TLS. I'm going to buy it and bring it to my clinic tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So you roll with what you have, right? Yeah. And there are thousands or millions of devices on the market or in use in hospitals that you cannot upgrade them. And when you cannot, for example, your device cannot support TLS or access control, doesn't matter your PAC system or a storage system supports what. Because that's a piece of software, you can easily update it, you can implement a lot of things. But when the device doesn't support it, it fails. So you need to either have both options, secure and insecure options, mm-hmm. or in many cases when there's a why bother? I mean, nobody can use it really, so why we implement it? And when you read the specification explains all of this, authentication, security, blah, blah, blah. At the end says it's optional. It depends on the vendor. You decide what to do.
And leave it off, then at least it will work.
Exactly.
But then there is hospitals that still put it on the internet. Why? Is that people don't understand that it's that authentication is flawed, maybe, or is it an oversight or hurry, or how come we?
Could be being in a rush and oversight, but there are more reasons behind that. Imagine you run a small laboratory that you do just examination, just CT scan. You get patients from hundreds of different doctors or hospitals, and now you need to share the information with them, the result of examination. You cannot have a sort of authentication system or user management that different random doctors that you never worked with before, and maybe one time we work with, give them access, right permission, right authorization. That's the biggest challenge, I would say. In many cases, it's also for just one hospital, but they accidentally expose it to the internet. They don't know it's on the internet. That's another case that is easier
that struck
to
me
fix.
in your talk at Black Hat, because apparently it's open. I mean, some people open the port for that allows inbound connections to this server, right, from everywhere. No authentication in the protocol, no authentication whatsoever. So it was easy for you to walk in.
Exactly, but I would say it's more of a very classic misconfiguration on the network, that they just misconfigure the firewall. A very sensitive part of the network or system is exposed to the internet. Can happen to any industry, any protocol, and DICOM is one of them. Why it's more important? Because if that's exposed to the internet, it leaks easily a lot of sensitive information. I mean, DICOM protocol is like for search, retrieve, and insert data. So if it's exposed to the internet, if I want to give you an example, it's like putting a MySQL full of sensitive information on the internet. It's doing its job. SQL is not vulnerable itself. It's supposed to do what SQL does, but if you put it on the internet without any authentication, without any protection or monitoring, it's a misconfiguration in your network. It's not because your database itself is a bad thing or insecure.
Rob, how would you solve this? If a hospital comes up to you and say, hey, listen, we have this DICOM protocol that we need to exchange with at least 40 other organizations.
Yeah, so I think you have a few options except from patching. Patching is hard, as we just heard. But making sure that your DICOM service is in a segment or in the cloud where you have at least some control over the network connections, you could maybe limit the incoming connections for the certain hospitals or doctors, and not for the whole world. I think that's a really good start. If you have a more advanced firewall and you are able to read the traffic, maybe you can do something with the protocol inspection. See, okay, what's happening here? Are they retrieving all the files or only just one packet, and at what rate? I think it's a little bit harder to implement. Most of the time, data leakage protocols, that's what we were referring to, is kind of hard to get right. But I think that are solutions that you can do. But I would first start with looking at your configuration, how it's currently working, and then see what the best.
This requires a security professional, then, huh?
Yeah,
take a look at it from a security point of view.
You need some people that like Sina who can scan for it and say, okay, but this is completely open for the whole internet, and it only should be allowed for these hospitals that you work with.
Did hospitals respond to your research? Did they close it up?
I haven't done any rescan yet, but the thing is that there has been other similar research in a smaller scale that was published years before. And when I was talking to those researchers, they said, yeah, nobody has done anything.
Really?
It just gets more and more.
It's not that there haven't been incidents, huh?
And maybe also a priority thing for the hospitals. Security is important,
Definitely.
but in the end, healthcare is more important. Like my own choice. If I break a leg, I go to the best doctor and not necessarily to the best CISO.
Definitely. And the thing is that if one hospital today decides to go on the cloud for any reason and move their PACS and DICOM system to the cloud, forgot to do the right configuration security, it's one hospital, but that means thousands of records and patient information. So it goes higher more dramatically, I would say.
Is there anything else specific to healthcare you think that's difficult in cyber? All protocols are, it's hard. You explained that. It's really hard to get rid of this. Is there any other circumstances within healthcare that make it difficult to do proper security?
Well, I would say in healthcare, the biggest differentiation with other industry is that what this industry does, it's about taking care of patients, keeping people alive. So it's a very important and critical task to do, and you cannot set it to the second priority because of your IT security, right? In many industries, maybe you can do that. Or for example, if there is a delay, if your service is disturbed for a few hours, for a day, because you want to have a maintenance windows to improve your security, it's possible. For example, the organization can handle that delay or cost or whatever. But in healthcare, you cannot just shut down part of the hospital because you want to update your firewalls. And many hospitals, many countries, many cities already do not have the capacity to take care of all the patients in a way they should. So now let's say, 20% of the hospital should be shut down because we want to upgrade the firewall. It's never going to happen.
So the result of that is that the hospitals are a bit more conservative in their IT than in their IT, in the patch level, in the renewal of their applications. As long as it works, it works.
Definitely. I mean, for instance, let's say Rob today afternoon in the hospital, would you be willing that they care about your health or your data, which is your priority? I mean,
my health, of course. Yeah,
definitely. So I mean, he doesn't want to be his care about his health to be paused for half a day, but they take care of his data.
I'm not going to say it's okay, patch your firewall this evening, I will wait.
Exactly.
There's also people who post their x-rays online, on Instagram.
I mean, it's their personal choice, but
and it's only one record then.
Exactly.
That's true, yeah. And the pandemic also was a boost in this development, I think, huh?
Definitely. I was reading an article from HIPAA Journal that shows from 2019 to 2020, there is a big peak in IT incidents in healthcare. Before that, definitely we had some incident, but from 2019 to 2020, when pandemic and lockdown came in, there was an urgent need for many services, especially digital services in healthcare that we didn't have before, or many companies and hospitals were planning to have those services in their 5 or 10 years roadmap. But we need it right now. So,
and they, of course, first all called you for advice on how to securely do that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what happened in that time, digitalization got boost in healthcare. We had a lot of telemedicine solutions, applications, remote patient monitoring, remote patient care, which is, of course, very good. Still, we're using it. It has a lot of advantages. But what happened, there was an urgent need. So many companies, many hospitals rushed into it because it was about people safety. They had to do it. They didn't care about the security. They rolled out new feature, digitalization. And definitely in such a situation, you make some mistakes, some errors, and which is architectural. Maybe later it's hard to fix. So in that situation, also many startups came to the business because it was a situation that you could easily get support financially or different ways to provide a new solution that was needed in that situation. They also came to the business, to the market without really proper security. They rolled out to production. A lot of sensitive patient data flew into those systems. And now it's harder to handle because you don't know where the data is, who has what. Many data breaches since 2019. If you look at the statistics, it's up to the roof right now. And it's hard to go back there. I mean, still, we can control it, we can work on it, we can mitigate it. But definitely the pandemic had a great impact on the IT security incidents. Because of this, and another reason was that many small clinics and businesses that they couldn't afford the resources for in-house digitalization, they had to rely on the service providers, like managed IT services or SaaS solutions, a lot of things. And it made this industry more centralized a little bit around the service providers. So what happens now? Back in the days, maybe if a ransomware gang wanted to target healthcare industry, they needed to target 20 different hospitals. Some of them could work, some of them not. But now, if they attack one of those service providers and successfully get access, all of a sudden they have access to tens of different hospitals and clinics. So it made it a little bit easier.
Scale increased massively then.
Exactly. It made it a little bit easier, and it's easier also for the attackers to target one company and get a lot of data.
Yeah, and then those hospitals are still responsible for the data that they outsource to the third. We did a whole episode on supply chain attacks. Mm-hmm. This is yet another example.
Yeah.
But those, maybe we can dive a little bit into the Screen Connect vulnerability that we talked about, that we announced earlier, mm-hmm. Because that is, I think, an example of this, huh?
Yeah, it's a supply chain.
Can you explain a little bit how that works?
Yeah, I can.
What happens there?
This typical example, as you mentioned, a lot of hospitals make use of the TDS system, transport. I forgot the abbreviation, but and they used Screen Connect.
That's a chain of pharmacies in the US.
In the US, and they are active in all 50 states, so you can have an idea on what the scale is. And they use this application that's called Screen Connect, and that was easily with just modifying your HTTP request. So when you're visiting something on the internet, it's an HTTP request, and you can modify it a bit, and you can simply do an authentication bypass and start the setup wizard again. So you then access the setup wizard. You can configure the whole system again, of course, giving you full rights to connect to each system. The Screen Connect is a system that allows for remote access to other computers. So you can imagine if you have access to that whole system, then in this case, access pharmacies in 50 states all over the US with the remote desktop with the kind of like a remote desktop connection, and go after your goal after that, and that is quite easy then.
Yeah,
so because you have the access, you control the system.
Yeah, and just by ordering a very handy tool that there was no CISO involved to do like a vetting on beforehand.
I'm not sure if that happened, but it's a serious flaw if you can just altering a HTTP packet. So that's quite simple. So it's a very serious vulnerability. With in this case, because everything is connected, all those pharmacies are connected with this system, has a very big impact.
Yeah. We're going to do a technical deep dive in one of our upcoming episodes on Screen Connect as well. Yep. That's what you mean, eh? Lots of smaller organizations. Those small organizations probably don't have a CISO, eh? I mean,
some yes, some no. Maybe some of them, for example, there is a person like CTO or IT manager who is also responsible for security. It depends, I would say, like any other business, depending on the size, their resources, their budget. Some do, some don't, unfortunately.
Would you say that's important to how can you solve this? I mean, a hospital should probably have a CISO. Do they have a CISO or at least a central authority that looks purely at cyber?
Well,
does it exist everywhere?
Not everywhere. Definitely not everywhere. I mean, some hospitals, the bigger ones, they have CISO, they have their security team, a lot of security systems and tools, but a smaller one usually do not. They usually have just a small IT team that take care of everything, or they even outsource that to IT service provider, and they have, or they do not have, a person or a small team that takes care of security in a very generic high level, not very deep for the need and requirement of that specific hospital or industry. About the authorities that take care, in some countries, some areas, yes. For example, in US, there is HIPAA that all businesses, hospitals, whoever is involved in healthcare industry, they have to follow that standard. It's something like ISO 27001, more or less, that brings a bare minimum security.
That's basic least. Hygiene, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Something very generic, something baseline, but at least there is something.
There's something.
Exactly. But in many countries, in Europe, for example, there are some laws. I was checking the laws in Germany, for example, a few days ago, that says in healthcare industry, it's mandatory to have security awareness regularly for your employee. But that's only 2 sentences that it says. Mm-hmm. It's law that says you have to do security awareness. It doesn't say how, what, when. You just need to do it, and there isn't very specific guideline or standard or something mandatory that companies or hospitals should do.
I can imagine there's also no one checking if you're doing it.
In many countries, no. For example, in Germany, there is BSI guidelines, which is for critical infrastructure. Healthcare is one of them, but they are not mandatory. They say, if you're a hospital, if you're a bank, if you're in energy sector and you want to have good security, here is the guideline, here is the checklist, here is what you need to do. Everything is public on the internet. All companies can use it, but it's not mandatory, it's not obligated. So many businesses or organizations just don't do it.
How would you approach this? If suppose you are the commissioner for healthcare in the European Union and you have the power, you can make the law. What would you do? Would you indeed make it very specific?
Well, I think making it a little bit more specific for healthcare, it would be helpful, considering the type of operation, the type of data that is handled in those environments. But after all, regulation and law cannot really fix everything. I mean, we have it for other industries. We have ISO, we have NIS2, and. It helped, for sure. It improved and enhanced the security, if you look at the bigger picture in overall. But it didn't solve all the problem. If it could solve the problems, why we still have a lot of data breaches, attacks, ransomware? Of course, it decreased the number, but didn't solve. It's going to be the same for healthcare industry. It's going to help. It improves, for example, for a very structural and fundamental issue like DICOM, regulation and law could help because it's not a very deep technical thing that each hospital should take care separately. It's more of an industry-wide issue. that regulation and law could facilitate helping it, or at least push for helping it, because right now everybody passing to the other party.
And if you make it a law, then if you're pursuing good security as a hospital, then you don't get disadvantages because you're spending time on doing security instead of maybe the healthcare, and because everyone needs to do it. If you leave it open for hospitals to choose if they go do security or not, then you might have a disadvantage.
They'll invest in the best doctor instead of the CISO, of course.
Yeah, I think that has a higher priority. And you also want to show you that you are the best hospital, so people come to you.
But leaking data is one thing, and yeah, I would never like it if my disease was open in the internet and I would have my name on it and a birth date and my social security number. There's things that I cannot change. I mean, it's not like a password that you can change and then who cares? It's out there, right? But more importantly, maybe is you also proved that you could change data with the DICOM protocol, right? And what if we could put down our healthcare? It's similar to we had a water company here the other day. If a nation state would attack us and bring down the water purification system, that would obviously be a problem. The same could happen with healthcare, maybe. I mean, we're not just talking about, hey, my scan is on the internet, my photo. Yeah.
Well, definitely. I mean, when it comes to the APTs and political conflicts that countries go against each other in the cyber, there was an article that's saying 2023, last year, healthcare industry was the third global target of APTs. Because they also know that what could it cause if a hospital goes down, just one hospital in one city, if it goes down and they cannot operate, could be a DDoS attack or DOS attack that just take down the system. People would go angry faster than if you target a bank, if you target, public transport. Still, it pissed them off. They cannot go to work, they cannot make bank transaction, but they're not worried that their health, their beloved ones,
it's more about their safety then.
Exactly. It's more immediate. It's more fatal. People could die.
Cause of death, ransomware attack.
Exactly. So, because of that, for APTs or ransomware, they use it as a leverage. That's the reason why it becomes a more
you can really disrupt a country then. If you don't pick one hospital, but just a few in a country, then you're really disrupting a country.
Exactly. I mean, there has been few cases in different countries, mainly in US, because they have the more population, bigger hospitals, that the ransomware gang or APT attacked a chain of clinics or hospital, hundreds of hospitals and clinics at the same time. They couldn't operate. Even if they can do it for half a day, that's enough to make a huge impact. People get angry, some people might die, and a lot of subsequences.
Yeah, let's look into a ransomware attack that we actually that we know a lot about. Before we do so, there's a treasure hunt. Like I promised at the beginning, there's a code appearing now on screen, and I'll say it to you as well. It's 052414, and if you email that to code@threat-talks.com, you will get a really cool threat T-shirt. So keep them coming. Mail us and enjoy. So this attack, that ransomware attack, it's been in the Irish hospitals, in the HSE hospitals. We've seen there's extensive research also available online.
Yeah, there's quite good reports.
Could you explain a little bit what happened there?
Yeah.
First of all, was this avoidable, you think?
Yeah, I think it was avoidable, completely? Or at least the blast radius, so the impact could limit by a lot.
Can you explain what happened?
It started with a client computer, with a desk computer just of an employee that got infected with malware, and it had a chance to spread out to the whole network. So one of the learning points is segmentation here. Another learning point: the malware was installed on a client computer. That client computer had a antivirus installed, or maybe even more advanced, like the endpoint detection and response tools we have nowadays. But it was only in detection mode and not in prevention. So maybe that could have been our first start. It's of course after the fact, it's always easy to point out what you could have done. But this is
this typical for a hospital to put it in read-only mode? I mean, we have a lot of debate about this with customers in general. I mean, we're going to put the IPS in blocking mode. And then the customer says, oh, yes, but wait, it could block my legitimate traffic. Yeah, true.
Yes, because I think it, again, goes back to how critical their operation are, and they cannot maybe tolerate an error that they didn't predict it or didn't see it before. So they think, okay, if my doctor or my nurse in an emergency situation wants to do this and that, and your endpoint detection system doesn't allow it, now we need to go back to IT if it's a service provider.
So it's considered to be a bigger risk that happens than a ransomware attack, for example. Then
exactly. So the risk could be higher than ransomware, until they get ransomed and they say, okay, they need to find the right compromise.
Is that so then? But I can imagine that it's really hard to predict the risk of being exposed to ransomware and what it will bring you to your organization. And maybe some organizations say, yeah, well, we can't control it anyway, so let's not put it in the equation of risk.
Well, I think the point is that, okay, of course, you can estimate and calculate the risk of a ransomware, what could happen, what could go down. And you also can see, okay, what is your business, what are your operation, who is working there, what you have, what you don't have, to find the right compromise that your business, your operations are going on and you're good enough in terms of security. So if a ransomware attack happens, or you can prevent it or you can recover fast. But this process usually takes a lot of resources, time and effort to come to a good conclusion and a disaster recovery plan or incident management plan. And when it comes to hospitals or a healthcare industry, because it's, again, critical, it's expensive, and maybe they cannot afford the resources that it needs. And in many cases, they don't even have a security team that has this mindset that, okay, this is what we need to do.
And in the end, it is an insurance. So hopefully you're going to put effort in security, but hopefully you never need it. So for
exactly.
When go back to the HSE case, so there are multiple hospitals around the whole country that all got infected because they used a central system or the central systems, and they had, because of that ransomware attack that was lateral moving through the network, they had to shut down all the systems. Which means that all the hospitals had to close, all the doctor, the buildings you go to for the doctor, forgot the name, but everything needs to be closed for a couple of weeks. They said that they didn't pay it at the end. But in the report it stated, the attacker released the decryptor key, so they could decrypt everything. Maybe that was a public opinion because of what you said is that if you take down one hospital, then you already have a lot of disruption. So you can imagine if you do that with multiple hospital and places that are there for your healthcare. So maybe it was the public opinion that forced them to release the key that they could.
The attackers, you mean, release it because of public opinion?
Yeah, that could be a reason. It's not stated anywhere, but they state they didn't pay it. Quite often you see we pay it and then you get the decryptor key, and it's in most cases really easy to restore and recover from your ransomware attack. In this case, they released the key and they're starting to restore everything. It still took them a couple of weeks, so the impact was really, really big in this case.
Yeah, well, again, we'll deep dive into the technical details of this in a future episode. But yeah, so ransomware happens a lot. We see it a lot in big sums of ransom being requested. Is that something you see as well?
Yeah, of course. I mean, just following the news every day, there are a lot of news about ransomware attacks in different clinics, hospitals, or even the companies that they're doing digital health, like, for example, the ones that provide services for mental health, the applications that you can install, or many others. There's a lot of ransomware attack against of them. And I would say mainly in hospitals, because I would say hospitals are a little bit more old-fashioned than the startups that are coming to the market recently in the digital health area. And I would say they are not very prepared for that, because hospitals, or in general healthcare industry, is a very critical but non-IT industry, which is heavily depending on IT. And in those situations, mainly in hospitals, when they are ransomware or any other sort of attacks that their IT operations cannot continue anymore, they run into a lot of problems because they didn't see many errors and problems that could happen if their IT system do not work. For example, if their patient monitoring system do not work, or if their patient record system or hospital information system do not work, that means they cannot see a record of a patient which is hospitalized, or they don't know, okay, what's the situation, what's the last record, what's the diagnosis, blah, blah. And in such those situations, usually they need more human resources, more nurses, more doctors, because the IT system help a lot and it decrease the need of having more human resources. But when the IT system is not working, they need more human resources and they're not prepared for that. They don't have any plan. They don't know how to take care of patients if their information system goes down and they cannot see the records, if they have the paper backups, not with every single piece of information, but only for the critical ones that a patient safety depends on that in case the IT system do not work. And usually in many hospitals do not think about it, and they think of backup just having a digital backup, a ransomware-proof backup, somewhere safe, very good. But the point is that if your IT system goes down, it takes you days, weeks, months, depending on your planning and your system, to rebuild and restore your backups. What you're going to do in those days, you cannot tell your patient
you should make
come
a plan,
back in a month. Yeah,
you should make a plan to go back to pen and paper, and that
exactly,
at least for that time frame.
Exactly.
I talked to a CISO once of a hospital, and and asked him, "Hey, because we are always practicing zero trust, so a natural question for us to ask, okay, what's your most important IT systems? Where do we start protecting, right? Because we protect per system and not try to do the whole IT at once, because that's much harder." And the guy said, "Well, it's actually the elevator system." Because for every process we have like a backup, like it is manual, at least on paper, right? But not for the elevators. And we've got to move patients. If they got to go to the operating room, they have to do so. So your ideal situation then probably is, as a hospital, that your elevator is the most important piece of your most important system.
Exactly.
Yeah. They're so practicing then. That's what you're saying.
Majority of them do not. And I mean, for example, in this case, elevator, I mean, the architecture of building is not in a way that you can move patient without having an elevator. And changing that is hard. For example, they do not have that paper backup of very sensitive information that they need in case their IT system do not work. They're heavily depending on IT systems now, and their backup is only digital backup. They also usually do not have a plan for human resources. How many nurses we need, how many more extra doctors we need if our IT system do not work to take care of our patients. Everything is on the system. Exactly. That's the problem. And if the system is not available, now you need more doctors, patient.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is that they should, I believe they do know, the medical staff, how to use non-digital care systems, how to use the old-fashioned measuring system and use it in case their digital ones do not work for any reason. How to communicate, how those paperwork flows of information work. All the things that maybe are oversight now, because it's digitalized, we have IT now, it's easier, faster, but it might be needed if there are ransomware or DDoS.
This is a non-technical thing. You can practice this. You can implement it, but also it costs time. Like implementing security, it's also a cost of time and money. Setting these processes up, even if it is just for the critical situations, will also cost time and people and money.
Definitely. But in this case of the airline situation, the hospital, that they had to shut down all their IT operations.
Yeah, I believe some went back to pen and paper, but a lot of functionality was lost when the systems went down.
Exactly.
Before we wrap up, there's another thing I wanted to pick your brain on. That's about, we talked about practicing and security awareness. So what's the role of educating users in your opinion?
It definitely helps. For sure it helps, but it's not everything. You cannot rely only on security awareness and say, okay, we are educating our personnel and staff. Because first of all, those security awareness program, if you see, regardless of the industry, is Not very deep. It's not very,
But also you can't expect a user to go into the mail headers and see whether the IP address of the mail is actually...
Definitely. I mean, you don't expect them. You give them just the basics. For example, the email, if it's like this and that, probably it's phishing, come to the security team stuff. But the thing is that the attackers, ransomware or APTs, they update their methods in terms of social engineering or technical-wise faster than the pace that we update and upgrade our security awareness and training. That's one thing. The second thing is that usually people forget about what they have learned. It's an easy program that you're supposed to be done 2-3 hours, a simple exam, and probably in a month you forget what was there, which is normal. I mean, their job is something else. And also, in any industry, anywhere you can find some people that they click on the link no matter what type of education and awareness program you had. So it happened anyway. But how it helps, it decreases the click rate, for example, or getting trapped in a social engineering. It doesn't help you to be cyber resilient completely. It mitigates the attacks in terms of social engineering, phishing. You need to combine it with other security practices. For example, having right access control, having right network segmentation, segregation, having a good EDR on your endpoints, combined with security awareness, you can increase or enhance your security.
There's a lot to do.
Definitely.
In this industry, yeah. Thank you. So to wrap up, we learned that old protocols are here to stay, especially in healthcare. So we got to work with them and be aware that they exist and wonder every time we connect something, hey, are we doing the same thing from a security perspective, right? So you should probably have someone in the organization that is purely responsible for cyber if you don't already have it, no matter how small. Maybe especially if you're smaller, right? And then there's also the technical solution we've talked about on this podcast for a couple of times already. Like you mentioned, segmentation, proper EDR, multi-factor authentication, user awareness, crucial items. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your insights. There's going to be infographics about the text that we just said, some links. We'll include a link to your DICOM talk. I highly recommend it to view this. Thank you very much for joining us today on the podcast. And Rob as well, thank you very much. Thank you, our listeners, to listen to this podcast, to watch this video. If you want to learn more about cybersecurity, are interested in the next episode, want to see more of the deep dives, be sure to subscribe to this channel so you'll get automatically a pop-up in your favorite app when there's a new episode available. Every Tuesday you can expect one. And we'd love to hear your feedback. So you can just comment, you can email us at team@threat-talks.com. And that leaves me from the Security Operations Center floor here at ON2IT to thank you once again and hope to see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Threat Talks, a podcast by ON2IT Cybersecurity and M6. Did you like what you heard? Do you want to learn more? Follow Threat Talks to stay up to date on the topic of cybersecurity.